There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from living at the mercy of other people's needs, not the tiredness of long days or sleepless nights, something deeper. The fatigue of a person who has spent years saying yes when their body whispered no, who has nodded through plans they dreaded, agreed to favors that drained them, stayed longer than they wanted because leaving felt like betrayal. You know this exhaustion. It lives in your chest like a stone. It sits there while you smile through another commitment you didn't want to make, while you answer another text asking for help when you're already underwater, while you cancel your own plans again because someone else needed you more. And the strangest part, you're not weak, you're not spineless. You're someone who prides themselves on being dependable, caring, present, someone people call reliable, someone who shows up. But somewhere along the way, being good became the same as being available. And now you can't tell where generosity ends and self-abandonment begins. You've become so skilled at reading what others need that you've forgotten how to hear yourself, so practiced at making space for everyone else that there's no room left for you. This is the paradox of people who can't say no. They give endlessly, but they're starving. The inability to say no is rarely about the present moment. It's an echo, a pattern carved into you long before you had language for it. Most often, it begins in childhood, in homes where love felt conditional, where approval had to be earned through compliance, where you learned, consciously or not, that your worth was measured by how little trouble you caused, how much you gave, how well you anticipated the needs of others before your own. Maybe you had a parent who was overwhelmed, emotionally fragile, or distant, and you became the one who fixed things, the peacemaker, the helper, the child who made themselves small so everyone else could breathe easier. You learned to read the room before you entered it, to sense tension like a shift in temperature, to adjust yourself accordingly. Psychologists call this parentification, when a child takes on emotional responsibilities that don't belong to them, when they become the caretaker instead of the one being cared for. But to you, it just felt like love, like survival, like the only way to keep your world from falling apart. Or maybe your home was different. Maybe it was rigid, rules-based, a place where obedience was safety and pushback was danger, where saying no to authority meant punishment, withdrawal, the cold silence that made you feel like you'd cease to exist. So you learned that compliance kept you connected, that your voice was less important than the peace. Either way, you learned the same lesson, that saying no meant risking rejection, that boundaries were selfish, that your needs were negotiable, but other people's were sacred. And so you built your identity around being needed. Because if you weren't useful, what were you? If you weren't agreeable, would anyone stay? This creates a pattern rooted in what psychologists call hypervigilance, a constant scanning of other people's moods, a sensitivity to disappointment, an internal alarm system that goes off the moment someone might be upset with you. You learn to read emotional weather like your safety depended on it, because once maybe it did. You became fluent in the language of other people's needs, but you forgot how to speak your own. And here's what no one tells you. The child who learns to say yes to everyone learns to say no to themselves, over and over until self-denial becomes reflex, until you can't distinguish between love and obligation. Now you're an adult, and the pattern repeats, but the stage has changed. You say yes to the friend who always needs something but never asks how you are. You say yes to extra shifts, extra tasks, extra hours, because saying no feels like letting people down. You agree to plans you don't want, relationships that exhaust you, conversations that leave you hollow. You do this because you've convinced yourself it's kindness, that it's what good people do. But inside, something else is happening. Resentment grows like mold in a dark place. Quiet, persistent, toxic. You feel guilty for feeling tired. You feel selfish for wanting rest. You wonder why everyone else seems to have time for themselves while you're stretched so thin you're barely there anymore. Why they can say no without shame while the word catches in your throat like glass. And the cruel irony? The more you give, the less people see you. Because you've trained them not to. You've become so good at being low maintenance that no one thinks to ask if you're okay. You've made your needs invisible, and now you're disappearing. Your relationships become transactional, though no one calls them that. You're the one people turn to in crisis, the one who listens, who helps, who sacrifices. But when you're struggling, silence. Because you never learned how to ask, and they never learned to look. You lie awake at night replaying conversations, wondering why you agreed, wishing you'd said what you meant, rehearsing the no you should have said, shaping it perfectly in your mind. But when the moment comes again, and it always does, you do the same thing, because the fear of conflict is louder than the voice inside you begging to be heard, because disappointing someone else feels unbearable, but disappointing yourself, that's just Tuesday. This is what psychologists call self-betrayal, the slow erosion of self-trust that happens when you repeatedly ignore your own boundaries. Each yes that should have been a no chips away at your sense of self, until one day you realize you don't even know what you want anymore, because you stopped asking, you stopped listening. You learned that your desires were less important than everyone else's comfort. And beneath it all, there's a deeper fear. The one you don't say out loud, that if you stop saying yes, people will leave. That your worth is contingent on your usefulness. That love is something you have to earn over and over by erasing yourself. But here's the truth they didn't teach you. The one you need to hear. Saying no is not cruelty. It's honesty. And the people who truly care about you, they don't need you to erase yourself to prove your love. They don't need you to be endlessly available, endlessly accommodating, endlessly small. They need you to be real, present, whole. You were taught that your value comes from what you give, but you were never meant to be a resource. You were meant to be a person, with limits, with needs, with a right to take up space without apologizing for it. Learning to say no doesn't mean becoming cold or selfish. It doesn't mean building walls or shutting people out. It means learning that your needs matter as much as anyone else's, that rest is not something you earn through exhaustion, that you can be kind without being consumed, that love doesn't require self-sacrifice, it requires self-respect. Start small. Start where you are. Notice when your body tenses at a request, when your stomach drops, when yes comes out automatically but feels like betrayal. That's your truth trying to speak. That's the part of you that knows what you need, even when you've spent years ignoring it. You don't owe anyone an explanation. No is a complete sentence. But if you need scaffolding while you learn, try this. I can't take that on right now. That doesn't work for me. I need to check in with myself first. These aren't rejections, they're boundaries. And boundaries are how you stay connected to yourself while connecting with others. And when guilt rises, because it will, sharp and familiar reminder yourself. Guilt is not proof you've done something wrong. It's proof you're changing a pattern. And change always feels like betrayal to the parts of you that needed the old way to survive. The child in you who learned to say yes to stay safe, they don't need to do that anymore. You're the adult now, and you can protect them in ways no one else did. You can teach them that love doesn't require self-erasure, that they can take up space and still be loved, that their voice matters, that their rest matters, that they matter, period. This is the work, learning that you are not the sum of what you give, that your presence, your full, rested, honest presence is the gift, not your compliance, not your silence, not your endless yes. You are allowed to exist on your own terms. You are allowed to honor your limits. You are allowed to disappoint people and still be good. You are allowed to choose yourself without it meaning you don't care. You are allowed to say no and still be worthy of love. Remember, a boundary is not a wall, it's a door, and you get to decide who walks through. You get to decide what you let in and what you keep out, not out of fear or anger, but out of love for the life you're building. The one where you're finally present in your own story. The the one where you stop abandoning yourself to save everyone else, the one where you remember you were never meant to disappear.